Essenes, which basically ostracized themselves into the desert of Qumran because they believed that Orthodox Judaism had strayed and deviated so far from God's laws that they had become some kind of satanic cult almost in their animal sacrifices. Josephus writes of the unbelievable bloodshed in the temple in those days, that every Passover they would slaughter over 250,000 lambs in one day. And he described the priests would be covered from the waist down in blood, and they had to have trench systems built out of the temple for all the blood to wash out of the temple, because it would just flood the whole place. And so you can imagine this like unbelievable bloodbath and genocide essentially of animals, where they believe that this is what God wants. And the Essenes were like, these people have fallen so far from God's laws. They've been influenced by the Egyptians, the Babylonians. They've lost the true faith, so we need to preserve it. So they went to this burning wasteland out in the Qumran desert, which was preferable to them over the persecution they would face in Jerusalem, to follow what they believed was the true way of Judaism, which was actually not to follow Father Abraham as the Orthodox Jews did, but theirs was Father Enoch. And Enoch is a much lesser known biblical character, but there's essentially one line, maybe one or two lines in the Old Testament that describe Enoch. And I believe he was like maybe 8 generations after Adam purportedly, so a very ancient person. And it says, Enoch walked with God, and then he was not, for God took him. And so that means essentially he was so devoted and so one with God that God couldn't stand the separation of him being in a physical body, and ascended Enoch up to heaven with him. And so the Essenes were like, hey, that's our guy. He was the closest one to God, so close that God actually took him back to heaven. So he was the real first father of our faith. And so they were followers of Enoch versus Abraham. They believed that starting with Abraham, it started to deviate, and then through Moses and so on and so forth. So the Dead Sea Scrolls really brought the Essenes back to the mainstream awareness. And from there, then we had Edmond Bordeaux's findings just a decade or two later that got published. And it's very clear that the universe has chosen this time to bring these teachings back to life. And when you study them and read them, I think it's very apparent why.
You spoke to the kind of 3 different main sects, Essenes being these individuals who like really lived in the way and like showed in their works and in their deeds their true devotion to God.
So there was 2 main sects of the Essenes, and this is, at least as far as Josephus is concerned, Josephus is kind of the main historian that Christians especially rely upon to verify the New Testament and the life of Jesus. So the Osseans were to the south and the Nazarenes were to the north.